Yes, indeed it does. Cleveland does rock from time to time, especially when a kid from Cleveland is hosting the Dennis Prager Show. Welcome to the Dennis Prager program. It is 6 minutes after the top of the hour. Bob France coming to you live from the rock and roll capital. You heard it. Cleveland, Ohio. Yes. Home base is the ReliefFactor.com studios of AM 1420. The Answer here in Cleveland. Glad to be with you. Dennis has a bit of a summer cold. Somebody is probably going to accuse it of being the variant. I just know how that works. You sniffle today, and a Democrat tells you, you've got the Delta variant. You cough today, and it's over. You're spreading the Delta variant. So, no, Dennis has a summer cold. We get those things. My son has a sore throat. He's being told he might have to quarantine from his college football team, even though he has already had COVID-19 back in October of last year and has all kinds of antibodies. He's got a sore throat, probably strep. People are flipping out. People are freaking out every time somebody has an illness of some sort and accusing it or blaming it on COVID or the variant or whatever. In other words, the fear porn continues to be spread, mostly by the American political left. Mostly. I don't want to turn the entire thing into a political issue, but it is largely that. So at any rate, Dennis is out with a little bit of a sickness today, and I'm very glad to be in his place with this question to start our broadcast. Why is it so difficult, virtually impossible, for American Democrats to condemn communism as a whole, as an ideology, as a history, as an oppressive, tyrannical method of controlling people? Why is it so difficult for Democrats to do that? I have been waiting for Joe Biden, the doddering, bumbling, stumbling, and very much mumbling old fool that he is, to say something about the people in Cuba rising up against oppression and tyranny, communism, the suffering that they have endured for decades. Since Fidel Castro and Raul Castro, the people of Cuba are rising up. They're starving. They don't have medicine. They don't have free speech. They don't have the economic opportunity to make something for themselves. They are suffering under the communist thumb in Cuba that they have for decades. Now they're rising up. They're pushing back. They're demanding freedom. They're waving American flags. And Joe Biden has thus far, unless I missed it, from the end of my local broadcast this morning until now, unless I missed it, has said not a word. Not a word of solidarity and support for the victims of oppression and human rights violations in Cuba. Not a word of condemnation for the communist government or communism as an ideology. Nothing. I'm staring at his Twitter feed right now. Last time Joe Biden, wink, wink, tweeted. He doesn't tweet. His staff tweets. But the last thing that they tweeted for him was yesterday. Get vaccinated, folks. It's free, it's effective, and it's never been easier or more important. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to how easy it is since you're sending people door to door with needles in their hands, practically. But that was the last thing. Not a word about the communist revolt, communist uprising, or excuse me, not the communist uprising, the revolt against communism, the uprising against communism on behalf of the oppressed people of Cuba. Not a word. Why is it so difficult? Bernie Sanders, an avowed socialist and thus a communist. The varying shades of difference between Marxism, communism, socialism are so negligible as to just use them interchangeably, I think is a fair thing to do. An avowed socialist who has in recent years praised the Cuban communist government. Not said, well, I'm indifferent, praised the Cuban communist government. Now the people are by the thousands coming out of dozens of cities in Cuba, demanding liberty, demanding opportunity, Bernie Sanders has said not a word. Another avowed socialist, self-proclaimed, self-declared socialist, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And no, I did not misspeak. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has said nothing about the enslaved people, for all intents and purposes, of Cuba and their uprising. Nothing to support them in solidarity. Probably is grinding her teeth in the background, angry that somebody would push back against what her vision of utopia is. Communism, socialism, government-controlled wealth, government-controlled property, the end, the death of individual property rights. She looks at Cuba and says, that's the way we got to make it here. What are those people crying about? What are they complaining about? Not a word from Kamala Harris, who wanted to socialize when she introduced the Senate version of AOC's, or ADC as I call her, Green New Deal, socialize the entire energy sector of the United States. Federalize it all. Green energy. All bought and distributed by the federal government. Not a word from Kamala Harris about what's happening in Cuba. Why do I care about what's happening in Cuba, you may ask? We're here in the United States. They're over there on an island. Well, let's talk about this. A couple of reasons. Number one, Cuba is 90 miles off of the Florida coast. They matter. They have mattered throughout history. When we talk about the Cuban Missile Crisis and the Soviets perhaps attempting to or threatening to reach the U.S. East Coast from that island nation of communists, number one. Number two, we have been the haven for how many Cubans? Cuban people truly seeking exile. Not exile, beg your pardon, asylum. Cubans who have been seeking asylum, who get in every little rickety boat they could find, strapping themselves to pieces of driftwood, hoping they'll float 90 miles across the ocean to the American East Coast or to Florida. We have been inextricably linked to Cuba for a very, very long time. So that's number one. And number two is the obvious. While the people in Cuba are demonstrating and protesting and demanding opportunities to live and survive in that island prison of a nation, they're waving American flags. What does that mean? Why do I care about that? Surely you know. Oppressed people in Cuba are waving American flags because the American flag is the goal. The American flag is the symbol of what they desire. Their goal, liberty. Their desire, their demand, freedom. And what better symbol of freedom is there than the United States flag? This is where they want to be. They're waving that flag and saying, we want to be like this. And at the very same time they're doing that, what's happening here in the United States? The nation that flies that flag. Here in the United States, American Democrats, leftists, are burning that flag. They're snubbing that flag. They're turning their back on that flag. They're kneeling in the presence of that flag. They are calling that flag a symbol of hatred and oppression. Privileged American Democrats, and I call them privileged because we are all privileged to be in this free nation, this glorious nation. Privileged Democrats see the American flag as a symbol of oppression and racism. Meanwhile, actual victims of oppression in Cuba fly that flag and wave that flag as a symbol of where they want to be. I want you to tell me how that makes sense to you. It can't make sense to you because there is no lot. If you've got two IQ points to rub together, that doesn't make sense. How are privileged people in the U.S. complaining about being oppressed when there are people who are oppressed in foreign countries wishing they were here? We got a lot to do today. My name is Bob France. I'm in for Dennis Prager. Stay here.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
So critical race theory actually is indoctrinating our children to tell them that if you are white, you are an oppressor. You are innately designed to be racist. And if you are Black, you are oppressed. In other words, you will never have the opportunities that the white person has. And the little boy or the little girl that's sitting beside you in your classroom is the reason why. This is why it's such a divisive, and in itself, it's completely racist.
Well, it is. I mean, that's what I love about people who scream racism are often guilty of the racism themselves. I mean, it's the quintessential projection. How can you condemn children who've done nothing wrong? How do you make victims and oppressors out of kids in elementary school?
Well, this is what fired me up. This is what got me initially so upset, is that, you know, I watch my 10-year-old son play football with little boys from every race, from every walk of life, every religion. And I watch them as they help each other up on the field when they get knocked down. I watch them give each other high fives. I watch them do chest bumps, right? They are not thinking, oh, you're Black, so I can't touch you, or, oh, you're less than me. Guess what? They've got Blacks, whites, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Jews. They're all playing together, and they're all respecting each other, and they're all caring for each other. Why would you put such a divisive theory or ideology into a school system?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Surprise.
Sharon and you what?
Things just happened.
My girlfriend and my best friend.
You got 30 days to grow up, son.
Nathan Hanning, it is good to have you home.
Nona, it's Nathan.
Well, you don't mind my giving her your room, do you?
Really though, thanks for taking me to this position.
I thought about you first. Come on, growing up, I had a huge crush on you.
There are things that we all need to change about ourselves, but we can't blame God because He helps us change.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com. Streaming on Salem Now.
218 out with him. Headed for the house. He's got a hostage.
You believe in God, Chuck? Why does a kid die?
Thanks so much for joining us. Bob France sitting in for Dennis Prager. Phone lines are open to you at 8 Prager 776. That's 877-243-7776. So I stand corrected. I said that perhaps something happened in the hour between the end of my local show here in Cleveland and the start of this Prager show. And it did. Joe Biden did finally make a statement. I will read it to you. The Cuban people are bravely asserting their fundamental and universal rights. Those rights, including the right of peaceful protest and the right to freely determine their own future, must be respected. The United States calls on the Cuban regime to hear their people and serve their needs at this vital moment rather than enriching themselves. He went on to say in a statement that the U.S. stands, quote, with the Cuban people and their clarion call for freedom and relief of the tragic grip of the pandemic and from decades of repression and economic suffering to which they have been subjected by Cuba's authoritarian regime. All right, so they waited, of course, until they were beaten over the head by conservatives and other interested parties since yesterday, who immediately called for an end to the communist regime of Cuba and for the freedom and liberation and opportunity for the people of that island nation. So it took him a little bit too long, but he finally said it and did strike all the right notes there. The question is that just because that's what had to happen, or is that what he and they feel? We'll find out when we see if there's a statement from Kamala Harris. We'll find out if there's a statement from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We'll find out if there's a statement from Bernie Sanders and other members of the far radical socialist left that are running the Democrat Party right now. But the most important part of this thing that I want to kind of strike and make very clear to you is the part that the irony that is so thick here, that oppressed people say, we want to come to America. And privileged American Democrats say, we hate America. And that's one thing I've learned through the years, in particular these last few years, during the Trump administration. When a Democrat tells you they hate America, you better believe them. They're not joking. They're not playing around. When they desecrate the flag, when Black Lives Matter calls the flag a symbol of hatred, when Olympic athletes turn their backs on the flag and the anthem, believe them. They do hate this country. And what's, again, striking here is the irony of the fact that the people of Cuba have suffered under the Castro regime for decades. And it's a symbol of everything that's wrong with the world. Communism, in this day and age, after the history that we know of communism throughout the world, literally killing hundreds of millions of people. Communism is something that one would think would be kind of part of a bygone era. It would be kind of they tried that a few times in a few different places and it failed miserably. But instead, it continues to grow in certain parts of the world and is fantasized about here in the United States. It's something that is aspirational for young, ignorant millennials and Generation Z, Che Guevara t-shirt wearers. They fantasize about communism. So you got people over in Cuba suffering so terribly under Castro's communist regime, both Castros, Fidel and Raul, suffering terribly. And yet here in the United States, the American Democrats revere Colin Kaepernick, who proudly wears Castro-supporting T-shirts to press conferences. You follow this? The left worships and reveres a guy, Colin Kaepernick, their OG kneeler. They revere him for his support of Castro, as the people who suffer under Castro wave American flags, saying, we wish we were you. You understand that? Here's what I don't get. We see a massive rush of humanity coming to the American southern border. And we know that the Democrats want this. We know that Kamala Harris was tasked with dealing with this, and we know that she has not dealt with this. And it's in large part because they want more soon-to-be Democrat voters to be coming into the United States by the millions. We know there's a crush of people coming into the United States. What I don't understand is why isn't there just as big of a rush for the border going the other direction from American minorities? To listen to Black Lives Matter tell the story, to listen to Joe Biden, who blames every problem in the United States on white supremacists for some strange reason, to listen to the Democrat National Committee tell the story, the United States is systemically racist against people who are brown and black. Brown and black people are oppressed here. They're not even free. Didn't one of them say that just back on the 4th of July? Didn't Cori Bush, and a Democrat member of Congress, an African-American woman, didn't she actually tweet on the 4th of July celebrating our independence that black people are still not free? They're literally still enslaved in the United States. If this country is so bad for black and brown people, as the left tells you that it is, why aren't black and brown people fleeing to Mexico? Or going north to try to get into Canada, although they're on lockdown, so maybe not right now. Why aren't they fleeing for the border to get out if this country is so bad? And better yet, why are the brown people of Cuba flying American flags and wishing they were here? Why are millions of people around the globe, from virtually all continents, trying to find their way to get to the northern triangle countries of Central America so that they can make their way up through Mexico and get to our southern border? Why are people from Africa, people who are brown or black by designation as the new terminology goes, the new vernacular goes, why are brown and black people from Africa, from Europe, from South America, from Central America, from Latin America, why are they all trying to get into a place that black and brown people who are here, who live in the privilege of the United States, say is so terrible? And why aren't they trying to get out? This is really a remarkable thing. To see that flag, the red, white, and blue, flying so proudly in the hands of freedom fighters in Cuba, saying this is our aspiration, is to be like America, and then to pan the camera over to the United States, into any leftist colony, any Democrat stronghold, and see them burning that flag and denigrating it, desecrating it, kneeling before it, saying that it stands for hatred and oppression. 877-243-7776 is the number. That's 8Prager776. I very much want to talk to you. I want your thoughts on this. I want your thoughts on what's going on in Cuba. I want your thoughts on how the United States of America, Democrats in the USA, can take this for granted so much. I'll be right back.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
When I go to some of these liberal towns, I'm met with disgust or protest. It was actually incredible walking the streets of Burlington. We had people coming up saying, I listened to your podcast. Now, this is literally the town where Bernie Sanders was mayor. That's Burlington, Vermont. So we went to Vermont, and over the weekend, some people actually stopped me when I was speaking at that church, and they said, Charlie, I listened to your podcast on slow motion secession. I encourage all of you to check out the podcast we did on slow motion secession. We got a lot of feedback from it. And they said, Charlie, I'm already there. These are people that live in Vermont. They say, I want to go to a place that can disconnect from this government. They do not represent me.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Get back or I'll shoot you.
No one's left inside for the pastor and his two daughters.
And if you run, I'll shoot your family. Nobody cares whether I live or die. It's bad.
I'm not gonna stand around and be a part of it anymore. Give me the gun.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
But what's happened in the media, the narrative, the media cover for the Democrat double cross, is they're out there saying, oh, the Republicans always knew there would be a reconciliation. I keep saying, no. The Republicans knew that they were going to pass infrastructure, then you would try to pass reconciliation, but they knew it wouldn't pass. They were never joined at the hip. Am I right?
You were 100% right. It's without any question. This is how we see these socialist ideas start being socialized in their public forum. It is wrong. It is not consistent with any deal that was ever on the table, as far as I know. And we had this conversation just last Thursday amongst the Republican senators. This was a non-starter for everyone that was in the room.
And I believe that members of your caucus who I talked to were counting on Manchin, Sinema, Hassan, and a few others to sink the reconciliation deal, and that this was a way to jump over that opposition by linking the two. Am I right again?
Don't know the answer to that question, to be honest with you. I would say that there's no doubt that there's been a bipartisan coalition interested in reducing the infrastructure package. The question is, can the Democrats stand the heat in the kitchen? If they can, then they stand against their party. If they don't, they succumb to the pressure. I don't want reconciliation to be used on a $2 trillion mammoth package that has less to do with traditional infrastructure and more to do with a utopian society that can't exist because you can't perfect man and you can't expect people in Washington to spend your money better than you would.
I also expect reconciliation will do away with much of the 2017 tax bill, including stepped-up basis.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Without these complex business partnerships between the African elites and the European traders and commercial agents, the slave trade to the New World would have been impossible.
We talk frequently on this program about how the slave trade, not only the transatlantic slave trade, but the Arab slave trade could not have existed, but for the complicity of African chieftains who sold slaves that were captured in battle.
"27 minutes before the top of the hour. Thank you so much for being with us as we continue. My name is Bob France, sitting in for Dennis in Cleveland, Ohio. The home base here is the painfreerelieffactor.com studios of AM 1420 The Answer. My show airs daily 9 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time if you are interested in listening to more of what you're hearing right now. But I'm very privileged and pleased to be in for Dennis with you today. We're going to go to Granada Hills, California now, and welcome Maria to the program. Maria, my name is Bob, in for Dennis. Thanks for joining us. Go right ahead.
Hey, Bob. Thank you for taking my call. My family came from Poland, really subjected to egregious issues from Nazism and communism. They escaped. They came to America. The Cubans are suffering the same under communism, a regime that is absolutely despicable. It's at our shores. Shall we look back at the Bay of Pigs and what a threat Cuba has been because of the communistic influence there? They are right at our shores. This is a perfect opportunity, I would say the chance of a century, for America to step in and help the Cubans, like America helped the Poles, like America helped the many communistic egregious regimes to overthrow those governments. What more do we need with this opportunity? And the Democrats, this administration right now, has been dragging their feet. I'm sure if President Trump was in office, he would seize the opportunity. Where is this administration? Nothing until this morning. This happened yesterday. It should have been front line, above the fold. alerts to this country. Look what's going on in Cuba. And in fact, the press has been rather silent on this, and I really commend you for bringing this to our attention. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the phone call. I appreciate it. You are 100% right. The minute this started, conservative news outlets, those that there are, of course, we're not talking about networks and we're not talking about mainstream newspapers, but the conservative outlets that there are did trumpet this from the rooftops, and immediate responses were made by conservative Republican members of Congress. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, in particular, because of their backgrounds. Marco Rubio representing Florida, as you point out, just 90 miles separated between Florida and Cuba, and of course a massive Cuban population of expats in Florida. So he spoke out right away. Ted Cruz is of Cuban descent himself. They jumped on this immediately. Biden waited, almost 24 hours. And still nothing, again, unless I'm mistaken, and it's been released in a place I haven't seen yet, still nothing from Kamala Harris. And by the way, her name is pronounced Kamala. Kamala like communist, not Kamala like capitalist. Never make that mistake. It's Kamala. Kamala Harris hasn't said anything. Bernie Sanders hasn't said anything. The others that I mentioned haven't said anything. Why? And here's the reason why. What Maria just said, this is a golden opportunity if we have the right administration in power to really help support the freedom fighters and freedom seekers of Cuba and end the communist regime there, thus ending a potential threat from other communist nations using Cuba, as the Russians did, the Soviets did. So there's an opportunity, but the problem is the current administration probably sees this as an opportunity to buttress and support the communist nation. Yeah, Joe Biden had to say a few things. He said a few things. Words are words, actions are actions. Let's see what the actions are. Because what they have undertaken in the United States in an attempt to destroy, they have partnered with Antifa, they have partnered with Black Lives Matter, they have partnered with anti-racist and CRT peddlers, and trying to perpetrate an end to, or to bring about an end of capitalism here, an end to private property, an end to opportunity for all, and the beginning of equitable distribution to all by an all-powerful government. They don't side with the Cuban people. That's why it takes so long for them to speak, if they speak at all on this matter. They don't support the Cuban people. They support the communists. Why do you think they revere Che Guevara wearers, Castro shirt wearers, hammer and sickle wearers? It's trendy for the younger generations. It's kind of vogue. It's kind of hip. It's the thing to do. They don't care about the millions of people who die under the oppressive thumb of communists in all of these countries. They don't give a rat's behind. This is what they envision as being fair and just and equitable for all. It's social justice to bring about Cuban-style communism to the United States. It's sad and it's sickening, and we'll be right back.
Don't you get tired of commercials screaming at you to buy gold now with inflated promises on future values? In an unregulated industry, you need honest, real experts to give you solid advice to protect your wealth and top picks on the best coins and bullion based on real-time data and historical trends. For example, as environmental policy becomes a hot topic, one precious metal that's been significantly undervalued for years is potentially set to surge. Nick Rovich, owner of AmFed Coin and Bullion, has long recommended this precious metal. Up to 600,000 ounces of this rare metal will be needed by 2030 to produce green hydrogen. Nick is doubling down on this pick, and you should too. Call Nick at AmFed Coin and Bullion to find out more. I've been friends with Nick for years, and he's my go-to guy when it comes to coins and bullion. I trust him. He is a good and very knowledgeable man. Call Nick at 800-221-7694, 800-221-7694, AmericanFederal.com, AmericanFederal.com. Not one mistake.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I had studied Marxist history, beginning with Marx and Engels' Communist Manifesto from 1848. And when I first studied that and saw in section 1 of the manifesto what you can recognize as what's called the oppressor versus oppressed narrative of human history, a whole bunch of stuff that was taking place in our country began to become exceptionally clear to me. And I began to piece together a lot of the what I'll call militant impulse that was manifesting in society as time went on. And there's a victimhood ideology. There's constantly an effort by some individuals who have an agenda to pit groups of people against one another as victims or oppressed groups and oppressor groups. And we've seen very clearly over the past calendar year who the oppressor group is labeled to be and who the oppressed groups are labeled to be. And right now, under the auspices of diversity and inclusion training, as well as critical race theory and other narratives of American history that have been parading about throughout the country and showing up in our education system, all of those narratives seek to divide the American people by pitting people against one another into racial groups.
Yeah,
It's the white versus the black. It
used to be class, division by class. Now it's division by race, by skin color. We've only begun to scratch the surface. We're going to go deep dive on what's happening inside the U.S. military and why this man took the courageous step of writing the book Irresistible Revolution. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Some lawyer hit a little girl.
Former cancer patient Sharon Blackwell was struck by an oncoming vehicle.
Take this into evidence, sir.
I need to call my wife.
You've been accused of texting while driving.
Before you take your daughter off life support, give God room to be God.
You're not guaranteed another day, but you have today.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
1/3 of California small businesses will never reopen. 1/3. Many of the things that Gavin Newsom did had nothing whatever to do with science. You've heard me interview small business owners who said he imposed
right now at this very moment, a spontaneous uprising that has never happened in the last 60 years have happened in more than a dozen cities across Cuba.
That's the mayor of Miami, Florida, Francis Suarez.
They've shut down the internet, they've shut down electricity, and they've gone out to the street to beat and to harm those who are protesting peacefully for freedom and liberty in their country.
That is what communism does. That's exactly what they use, the iron fist. It's not a cliche to them, and it's not in a velvet glove. It's just the iron fist. The lieutenant governor of Florida is Jeanette Nunez.
We remain steadfast in our support on the side of freedom and democracy. And as the governor stated yesterday, Florida supports the people of Cuba as they take to the streets against the tyrannical regime that has plagued them for so many decades.
What will the Biden administration do to support them? What will the Biden administration do to crush communism in Cuba and support the freedom-seeking people who have been oppressed for so long? Don't hold your breath if you expect them to do anything other than give a little bit of lip service, because they know it's going to probably be needed for them to, generate some support among the Cuban-American population. Obviously, they lost Florida. Biden lost Florida, even with the rigged election. They need Cuban Americans on their side, at least those who are citizens now who are able to vote. But in reality, what are they going to do beyond words that are offered for political purposes? What are they going to do? Brent is calling us from Los Angeles on the Dennis Prager Show. It's Bob France in for Dennis. Brent, go right ahead, sir.
Blessings to you, Bob. Finally, a Frenchman like Lafayette.
I want each and every Republican politician to immediately demand the emancipation of all Cuban slaves. And I remember the terror I felt as a child during Castro's and Che's Cuban Missile Crisis. Let's finally bring to an end their satanically socialist regime.
That's well worded. I like the verbiage there. It is indeed exactly that. The alliteration is what I was trying to say. The satanically, and now I lost the word that he said. Satanically socialist regime. That is exactly what they are. And you know what? I said this on my local program this morning, and I'll say it here to Dennis's vast audience. The most important people in America that you should listen to on these matters of, socialism and Marxism threatening the United States, communism versus capitalism and freedom. The most important people for us to listen to, in all seriousness, are expatriates from those communist countries. I have had on my local program in Cleveland Venezuelan expats, Russian expats, Cuban expats. You need to listen to the people who have been there and lived it. Not just because they tell a great story and it makes you go, oh, that's terrible, but because of the warning sign that comes along with it. These people didn't just live it, they saw it forming. They saw it coming, and they tried to tell people, don't let this happen. And it happened because people said, that could never happen here. Listen to me. If you get into a room with somebody who has lived in communist Russia, somehow gotten out of communist North Korea, somehow gotten out of communist China, somehow gotten out of communist Cuba, somehow gotten out of communist/socialist Venezuela, if you get a chance to talk to anybody from any of those places, sit down. Don't just stand, sit and get ready to absorb and learn the most important information. Because these people have been there, done that. And they didn't want the T-shirt because the T-shirt probably had Stalin or Castro or Kim Jong-il or Mao on it or Che Guevara on it. Tom is in Glendora, California. We're California heavy to start the broadcast today. That's great. Tom, welcome to the show. Bob France sitting in for Dennis. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Bob. Honesty compels me to commend Biden for at least verbally condemning Cuba. But having said that, I must quickly add that this exposes a dangerous dichotomy in the Democrat Party. The dichotomy between hollow talk, which really means nothing, and action. We should be, as Maria said, we should be helping Cuba right now. When you look at it, Bob, the history of communism they've killed so many people. Cuba, Castro, China, Mao, Russia, Stalin, and now Putin, Cambodia, Pol Pot, North Korea, Kim Jong-il. The list goes on and on. The dichotomy, too, here is one between the good, once God-based USA and the devil of communism. Communism versus capitalism is really even much more. It's the devil versus God. And as I say that, I wonder if the Democrats will realize that when they backed BLM based on Karl Marx, and Karl Marx was a lover of the devil, as Paul Kingler so greatly shows in his book, The Devil and Karl Marx. Black Lives Matter, the group, not the saying. Black Lives Matter is probably embraces Karl Marx. One of the co-founders, Patricia Cullors, has said that. So if the Democrats don't realize that they're going down the path of raw evil and destroying this God-based nation, I don't it. We've got to become prayer warriors. We've got to get God back in America, fight bravely and honorably to save this great God-based nation, the best one in the history of the world. I would hope everyone would become a prayer warrior and in your actions be kind and decent to everyone and take back this great nation.
Tom?
Can you dig it?
That was one of the best, most well thought out, very extraordinarily well articulated, intelligent, filled with wisdom, and warning phone calls that I have taken in many, many, many years. I've been doing talk radio for about 24 years, and I'm telling you that was one of the best phone calls that I have taken. I'd like to respond to it all, but I can't. I'll second what you said about Paul Kenger. Dr. Paul Kenger, who is a professor at Grove City College in Pennsylvania. I was honored to share a stage to an extent with earlier this year. He's spot on about what you just said about Satan, about God, and the goal of Marxism, and yes, the goal of BLM and others when it comes to Marxism in the U.S. We'll talk more after this time out.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Surprise!
Sharon and I...
Sharon and you what?
Things just happened.
My girlfriend and my best friend.
You got 30 days to grow up, son.
Nathan Hanning, it is good to have you home.
Nona, it's Nathan.
Well, you don't mind my giving her your room, do you?
Really though, thanks for thinking of me for this position.
I thought about you first. Come on, growing up, I had a huge crush on you.
There are things that we all need to change about ourselves, but we can't blame God because He helps us change.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Anyway, you were talking about Bill Cosby, and I kind of disagreed with you about, you were saying about all the women. I might say maybe, 18 women?
Oh, no, it's close to 50 women that have made allegations.
50?
50, 50.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you believe all of them are
Well, you think all 50 are lying, including Beverly Johnson, one of the first black major models in America? She said he also gave her drugs and tried to rape her.
I'm a woman, and what I'm saying is, and they're in Hollywood. He's a high-profile man,
mm-hmm.
and they wanted to be alone with him. They might not have wanted his advances, but it's kind of
Lynn, please. There's no doubt that because he was famous and rich, he attracted women. The question is, did he drug them and have sex with them? And that's known as rape.
And the question is, let me answer that. That's what I'm saying. If they drank anything that he had,
right,
they willingly drink it.
Okay. Now, Lynn, hold on a second. The reason Bill Cosby got released is because the prior prosecutor apparently entered into some sort of deal with him and said, you're not going to be criminally prosecuted if you testify honestly in the civil trial. And in the civil trial, years ago, he testified and admitted that he gave that particular woman a drug in order to have sex with her. He admitted it under oath.
One woman. Okay, one woman. Yes, but not.
How many does it take?
Well, I just saying, I know I'm a woman. I know women. I'm not saying some of it didn't happen, but some of them are scorned because they thought they was going to get something out of it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
What is your message to those who
there's a reason for that. Could be better. Could be that way. Cuba could be a glorious island vacation paradise like Aruba, Jamaica. Ooh, I want to take you. Seriously, it could be. If it weren't run by communists that destroy everything that communism touches. All right, I was going to play a clip here from an interview I did with Congressman Jim Jordan, but I want to get a couple more phone calls in here before the top of the hour. Bob France in for Dennis Prager. Let's go to Anthony. Anthony, go ahead.
Hi, I was just calling.
just, I think, a lot of independents like myself, people that are truly independent, and we have listened to this show for years. Not this particular show, but the station for years, because we like hearing both sides. And it seems like, I don't know, lately it's just, I don't know, it's hard to listen to because it's so one-sided. I mean, the truth of the matter is these questions that are being asked, they're not complicated questions. And if you were to talk to the everyday man or a woman, I mean, they could answer these questions. And I know you guys are intelligent, so it seems a little disingenuous when you say a lot of these things. Like Black Lives Matter, just so you know, doesn't speak for every African American. So it would be nice if you didn't talk as if they did, as a great example. Everyone,
Anthony, if I may, here's the thing. None of us that I'm aware of have ever said Black Lives Matter speaks for all of Black America. Black Lives Matter only speaks for Black Lives Matter. And the organization that is Black Lives Matter is a Marxist hate group that is intent upon bringing about a cultural revolution in this country based on Marxist theory. They have made this very clear. It includes more than just dividing by race. It includes destroying the nuclear family. It includes destroying public schools as we know them. So this is what Black Lives Matter thinks. We all know there are many, 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 many black people, even in public life, who have spoken out against these things. So nobody has ever said this is what, all black Americans think ever.
And I never, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying a lot of times it's left as though it sounds like it's being said that way. I never said anyone specifically said that. But there are other things too. These questions are hard. Why do Africans, why do these people rush to America? I'll be the first person to tell you that America is the greatest country in the world. No question, hands down. That's why they rush to America. However, that doesn't mean that we still don't believe in the Constitution, a more perfect union. People that live here, that grew up here, and still think that there are some things that we could do better. We wish for a more perfect union. It's not a hard question, but it seems like there's a
Anthony, but here's the thing. What you're saying right now, which is very reasonable and responsible and accurate. We are a great nation, the greatest on earth, that can always do better because nobody is perfect, save for Jesus Christ. Nobody is perfect. That's my viewpoint. But can we do better? Yes, we can. But what you're saying is not what they are saying, and I'll follow up on that after this.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Las Vegas, I mean, it is open for business. It is wide open. It's unreal how different things are in a place like Las Vegas. I mean, somebody look up, Derek, see how many seats the O show at the Bellagio holds. How many seats are in that theater? The show is called O at the Bellagio. See how many seats it holds. It was packed. I mean, there's no social distancing going on in Las Vegas. There just isn't. Now, does that disturb you? Or does that make you happy? Does it bother you to know that there are communities that, like Las Vegas, that have a theater that I sat in and was in amazement at the Las Vegas production of O at the Bellagio with 1,800 seats, and it was packed. It was sold out. There weren't seats between other seats. There weren't empty seats blocked out with stupid X marks. And incidentally, on the topic of Las Vegas, may I respectfully suggest a must-see show. If you like Vegas like I do, I don't do a whole lot of gambling. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I love the theaters, the shows. I love the hotels. I love the restaurants. I love the vibe of Las Vegas. The Magic of Jen Kramer at the Westgate is a must-see.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
We've had 6 months of the new administration. It is the farthest thing from moderation that the government has ever seen, and it is the fastest track to extremism that we've ever had elected.
But Kevin, how did I know that in advance? Why in my debate
because
with
I
David
told you.
French did I know this and you knew this? There was no question in my mind. So the fact that this has now happened, part of me wants to say, ha ha, but it's just too sad to say ha ha. This is something that I warned against and you warned against and others warned against because we knew that the consequences are devastating.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Yesterday, General Milley told a congressional hearing that there is no chance, very unlikely and very little motivation for the People's Republic of China on this, the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, to assault Taiwan in the near term. Quote, there's no reason to do it militarily, and they know that. So I think the probability is probably low in the immediate near-term future. Your reaction, Senator Cotton?
Well, I think that's right. Up through the end of the Beijing Olympics in February, Russia didn't invade Crimea in the 8 months before the Sochi Olympics in 2014. They invaded it 4 days after those Olympics ended.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Surprise! Sharon and I.
Sharon and you what?
Things just happened.
My girlfriend and my best friend.
You got 30 days to grow up, son.
Nathan Hannigan, it is good to have you home.
Nona, it's Nathan.
Well, you don't mind my giving her your room, do you?
Really though, thanks for thinking of me for this position.
I thought about you first. Come on, growing up, I had a huge crush on you.
There are things that we all need to change about ourselves, but we can't blame God because He helps us change.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Anyway, you were talking about Bill Cosby, and I kind of disagreed with you about, you were saying about all the women, I might say maybe, 18 women?
Oh, no, it's close to 50 women that have made allegations.
50?
50, 50.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you believe all of them are
Well,
telling the truth?
you think all 50 are lying, including Beverly Johnson, one of the first black major models in America? She said he also gave her drugs and tried to rape her.
I'm a woman, and what I'm saying is, and they're in Hollywood. He's a high-profile man,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted to be alone with him. They might not have wanted his advances, but is kind of
Lynn, please. There's no doubt that because he was famous and rich, he attracted women. The question is, did he drug them and have sex with them? And that's known as rape.
And the question is, let me answer that. That's what I'm saying. If they drank anything that he had, they willingly drink it.
Okay. Now, Lynn, hold on a second. The reason Bill Cosby got released is because the prior prosecutor apparently entered into some sort of deal with him and said, you're not going to be criminally prosecuted if you testify honestly in the civil trial. And in the civil trial, years ago, he testified and admitted that he gave that particular woman a drug in order to have sex with her. He admitted it under oath.
One woman. Okay, one woman. Yes, but not.
How many does it take?
Well, I just saying, I know I'm a woman. I know women. I'm not saying some of it didn't happen, but some of them are scorned because they thought they was.
I had a coughing spell right at the beginning of the last caller, and I want to apologize to him for that. I kind of introduced him and then turned off my microphone real quick so I could deal with this. But Dennis is a little sicker than I am because he's unable to be in today. And I am so privileged and honored to be here in his place. I'm coming to you live from the ReliefFactor.com studios of AM 1420 The Answer. That's in Cleveland, Ohio, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. Again, my name is Bob France, and the phone lines are open at 877-243-7776. That's 8-PRAGER-776. I want to respond to the previous caller to wrap up the last hour, if I may, before we go on and take more of your phone calls. And what I want to talk about is just he seemed to be bristling at the generalizations of conservative talk show hosts when it comes to matters of race or Black Lives Matter or something to that effect. And I was trying to make it clear to him. I don't believe any conservatives denigrate the black race or any ethnicity by saying they all think a certain way. Now, you can say this about political parties from an ideological standpoint. You know, if you are a liberal Democrat or a leftist, you think this way. It's a generality that goes with the ideology that you choose. But ideology is not race. Ideology is not your skin color. Ideology is not your culture. So people of a certain ideology, yes, we can generalize and say, you know, generally speaking, they all think like this. They all believe in this. Generally speaking, people who are on the right side of the political spectrum believe in this. When it comes to race, I don't hear anybody saying all black people think like Black Lives Matter does. Not at all. But what it will take, I think, for more progress to be made when it comes to dealing with ideology through the lens of race is for more black people to do what Larry Elder does, to do what Dr. Carol Swain does, to do what Leo Terrell does, to do what so many other prominent African Americans do, and that is to dispel the myth that Black America is what the left says that it is. Because the reality of the situation, my friends, is that the only people in the political world that actually do believe that people make their decisions or have a mindset based on their skin color are liberal Democrats, leftists. They're the ones who see black people as being all alike. And let's be honest, it goes back to their history. I mean, the Democrat Party was the party of slavery. The Democrat Party was the party of the Jim Crow discrimination. The Democrat Party was the party that opposed the Civil Rights Act, for goodness sakes. The Democrat Party founded the KKK. It's been the Democrat Party historically that has thought so little of black people or African Americans, whatever you want to use, that this is what kind of colors their, that's the wrong word, it's not meant to be in that way. It shapes their view of black voters. And this is how they decide how they want to appeal to black voters. It's not an accident that Joe Biden says the things that he does that sound like accidents, because he says them so often. When he generalizes and says that black people aren't getting vaccinated as much because black people don't know how to get online. He literally said black people don't know how to get online, which is how you get in line to get signed up for a vaccination. He said this is past spring. And that's a generalization that black people don't use computers or can't afford computers or can't get computers or whatever the case might be, a very denigrating, insulting characterization. It's the same thing as black people can't get identification. Voter ID laws are clearly voter suppression laws to keep black people off of the polls and away from the polls because, blacks, they can't get voter identification. It is interesting, by the way, that mentality that the left has when it comes to African Americans. It's repeated often, time and again, and sometimes they'll try to couch their accusations in another way, and Kamala Harris tried this nonsense. She tried this when she almost impossibly said out loud in an interview that it's almost impossible for people who live in rural Americans to get photocopies of their identification, to be sent in with their absentee ballot or their mail-in balloting. You know that what her code was here is black Americans, but she had to change it because, well, we're all starting to kind of catch on here to rural Americans. So she's picturing rural Americans. She's picturing, people maybe of color, just being, too far from town to go in and get themselves a license, too far from town to go in there and get themselves a photocopy, to find themselves a copy machine at the library or at the local drugstore or what have you. Listen to what she said.
Is agreeing to voter ID one of those compromises that you'd support? I don't think that we should underestimate what that could mean. Because in some people's mind, that means, well, you're going to have to Xerox or photocopy your ID to send it in to prove you are who you are. Well, there are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't. There's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them. People have to understand that when we're talking about voter ID laws, be clear about who you have in mind and what would be required of them to prove who they are. Of course, people have to prove who they are, but not in a way that makes it almost impossible for them to prove who they are.
Almost impossible to get a photocopy made in the year 2021. Now, I want you to think about what she's saying, and I want you to think about who she's talking about. Democrats have argued that voter ID laws are racist in intent because minorities can't get photocopies or actual government-issued identification. Minorities, they call this voter suppression, suppressing the minority vote because it's minorities who can't do it. So now she's describing it, and rather than saying minorities, she says people who live in rural areas. But who's she talking about? Again, what have the Democrats have said? Take it collectively. Don't take it individually. Don't take it in a vacuum. Collectively, their argument is black people can't get IDs. That's their argument. It has been very, very loud for a very long time. And now she's doubling down on it. Not only can they not get IDs, they can't get a photocopy of it. If they do have an ID, because everybody's pointed out you need an ID to cash a check, to open a bank account, to rent a car, to fly on a plane, to do this, and this. To live life, we need IDs. How many times do you pull out your driver's license in an average month? I mean, seriously. You're going to buy pseudoephedrine at the drugstore, you show your ID, because I got to make sure you're not buying too much of it and that you're using it to, create a meth lab. To cash a check, as I said, I mean, all these different reasons when you have to show your identification. So that argument is kind of being worn out a little bit. So now the new argument is, well, you might have your ID, but to make a photocopy of it, oh my gosh. I mean, rural people can't do that. And by the way, I think it's hilarious the number of rural people who have responded to her and calling her just the elitist, out-of-touch lunatic that she really is. But this is what we're talking about. It is the left that fundamentally believes that people of color can't do things that other people can. And even if the leftist is a person of color, in this case Kamala Harris, it doesn't change the narrative. She'll be the exception, but the general rule will still apply. Blacks can't get ID, and if you want to have voter ID required, that means you don't want black people to vote. It's the bigotry of low expectations, and that's exactly what it is. So I want to ask a question. As we discussed the first hour of the broadcast, the Cuban uprising, this oppressed Cuban people fly American flags, trying to say they want freedom from their communist overlords. Meanwhile, here in the United States, American Democrats burn and desecrate and turn their back on American flags because they see it as a symbol of oppression. Can you get along with people like that? That's my question. Can you get along with people like that? Do you want to unify with people like that? I saw a quote on Twitter from a guy who is a conservative pundit and commentator and blogger and podcaster. His name is Matt Walsh. He's one of the smartest pundits working, that said this just a few days ago, and I want to discuss it. He said there will never be unity. One side of the divide thinks children should go to drag shows, women have penises, infanticide is good, and all white people are racist. There's no common ground between us. I despise these people. I want to talk about that with you next.
Streaming on Salem Now.
218 out with him. Headed for the house. He's got a hostage.
You believe in God, Chuck? Why does a kid die? Drug dealer get off scot-free?
Well, the only answer to that is there isn't a God.
You have a choice. You can either let the darkness overtake you, or you can be a bearer of the light.
So just think of it as calling for backup.
Officer down, officer. You're the one God's called to be a shepherd.
Keeper, do you know who I am?
You are the author?
I am.
I don't know you.
Keeper, it's your son.
Hurry it up. Time is short.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
And so, Don, a question I get a lot, and where people are emailing us, freedom@charliekirk.com right now, is how is your family holding up in the midst of this? How is your father holding up? I mean, after delivering results for our country, doing everything he said he was going to do, people kind of take me aside. They say, hey, how are they hanging in there? Any insight you can give us, Don, into that?
Yeah, listen, we're doing well, maybe because we're a bit masochistic. We sort of like to be in the fight, and more importantly, because the fight is worth it. I mean, you brought up, opening this thing, my book, Liberal Privilege, like it's literally about all of these things, whether it's the sort of faulty persecutions, whether it's the ongoing aspects of this. I mean, look at what's going on, even, take January 6th, okay? And say what you want about it. Like, if you commit a crime, you should commit a crime. But the FBI and the highest levels of law enforcement, anyone who is, if you are within about 2,000 miles of Washington, D.C., and you're a conservative, it's like the FBI is putting a, have you seen this man? He was seen somewhere within 1,500 miles of D.C. that day. Let's find him. But 13, 14 months of looting, of arson, burning our cities down, taking over buildings. Charlie, I've been told that that's insurrection. I've been told that's insurrection, and yet there doesn't seem to be any interest in looking into that insurrection. It's total pass. And this is how disgusting it's been. And that's my point. I guess we have to stay in the fight. We have to be engaged. You and I both understand how much of a disadvantage you are in if you're a conservative. You understand you get no help from the mainstream media. You get no help from print media. You get no help from social media. Frankly, they're working actively against us.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Men and women died in Vietnam or the other wars that we fought for our flag.
Hey, what a great call. What a great point that is. To disrespect those men who spilled blood, who left their limbs on the battlefield the way the left is doing. Chris, you're on the Mike Gallagher Show. How you doing, Chris?
Good, Mike. It's a nice honor to talk to you finally.
Oh, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. Honor to speak to you as well.
Mike, I'll make this real quick. I'm probably not all that great at talking on air, but all I am is a lifeguard on the ocean front in southeast North Carolina,
Right.
And I just want to say that, this weekend we had outstanding weather. The crowds were fantastic. Everyone was just well behaved.
Wow.
Mike, I was on my tower. And I was looking north, and I saw the thousands.
Now 21 minutes after the hour, Bob France sitting in for Dennis live in Cleveland, Ohio. It's good to have you aboard. Hey, I want to remind you to take a look at your cell phone bill. Next time you do, if you're with Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile, you are paying way too much. I want you to switch to Pure Talk. Pure Talk can save your family over $800 a year. Yeah, same great coverage because Pure Talk is on the exact same network as one of the big three, but at a fraction of their price. And switching is as easy as putting out your switching out your SIM card, your SIM card. You can keep your phone, keep your phone number, or get huge discounts on the latest iPhones and Androids. I know Dennis has the iPhone 12 and is loving it. Plus, right now, get unlimited talk, text, and 6 gigs of data for just $30 a month. And if you go over, they don't charge you for it. There's a reason Pure Talk is the highest rated wireless company by Consumer Affairs and why they're the preferred wireless partner of AMAC. From your cell phone, dial pound 250 and say Dennis Prager. Save an additional 50% off your first month. That's pound 250 and say Dennis Prager. I want to re-ask the question I was doing before the break. Matt Walsh is, again, I think he's one of the smartest conservative commentators going. And he put a question. Everybody's saying we need to come together as a country. We're not unified as a country, and that's what's going to destroy us. We have to be unified. Now, generally speaking, I would agree with that because Lincoln said that a house divided against itself cannot stand. A country divided cannot stand either. So generally speaking, I would like to say, yeah, we should have unity. But here's what Matt tweeted just a little over a week ago. And I read it, and I repeated it, and I added to it, and I want to see what you think of it. He said, there will never be unity. One side of the divide thinks that children should go to drag shows, women have penises, infanticide is good, and all white people are racist. There's no common ground between us. I despise their worldview and have no respect for those who ascribe to it. End quote. And when you think about it in terms like that, I find it hard to dispute him that there will never be unity. Can you unify with one who believes that drag time story hour or drag queen story hour at your local library for your 3, 4, 5, and 6-year-old kids is a good idea? Can you unify with somebody that says that's okay? Can you unite with somebody who believes that a biological female, XX chromosomed, biological, chromosomal, anatomical, physiological, genetically female people can have penises, and that genetically male people can somehow have babies? If somebody is dyed in the wool on that, and there's no movement for them, that's the reality of it. And if a male who has testes and male genitalia, if he thinks he's a female, we must call him she and her and identify him as such. And if we don't, we're the bigots. We're the anti-science party. We're the ones who are causing the problems. We're the intolerant ones. Can you unify with people who think that? Infanticide speaks for itself. There's no middle ground, really, when it comes to abortion. You either believe in life or you don't. And you believe that that little tiny human, preborn, is a human and should not be murdered any more than the mother carrying him should be allowed to be murdered. You either believe that or you don't. Can you unite with those who don't? And then, of course, the topic of the age. All white people are racist. According to anti-racist training and anti-racist education and critical race theory, if you're white, you're an oppressor. You're a racist. You're a supremacist. And you can't even control it. It's not even something you consciously do. It's because your skin was born white and your ancestors were your ancestors, and the racism that they held when this country was founded was passed down through their DNA to you. You're racist. You're evil from the word go. I ask you, can you unite with somebody who thinks those things? There's no common ground there. There's no way to say, well, maybe just some white people are racist. Although you could say that some of every race is racist. There are white people that don't like people of other colors. There are black people who don't like people of other colors. There are Latinos who don't like people of other ethnicities, and on down the line we go. That's a reality of being human. There are some humans with some very strong bigoted flaws. But to say that they are inherently, some people are inherently racist, can you do that? Some people are inherently biased against others. I don't know that we can ever unite. Where's the common ground between abortion or non-abortion, pro-life and pro-choice? Where's the common ground? Where's the common ground with teaching little boys that if you really want to play with that Barbie doll and if you'll put on this pink dress and tell me that you want to be a girl, I'll start puberty blockers for you right now and schedule your trans surgery. If somebody believes that, is that going to be your friend? Is that going to be your fellow American, your comrade in arms? I don't think so. This country has very rarely been unified the way that it was after 9/11, which, of course, is coming up just a couple of months away from the 20th anniversary of that fateful day. We were unified. People put all of their differences aside for just a very short period of time after that. It didn't last long, did it? I don't even think, and of course I certainly do not wish for, a tragedy, something to befall us that would force us to share our commonalities again and kind of come together. I don't want there to have to be something like that would happen, but I'll be honest with you, if something did, I don't think there's anything that could happen that would bring these two sides together right now. Not when they are drawn starkly different as they are. One believes in freedom, one believes in oppression, one believes in liberty, one believes in government control, one believes in abortion, one believes in life, and on down the line. Do you think we'll ever unite again as a country, given some of the things that we just outlined? I really want to know what your belief is. All right, let's go to Billings, Montana, and say hello to Jeremy on the Dennis Prager Show. Hi, Jeremy. It's Bob France sitting in. Go ahead.
Hi, Bob. I just wanted to talk about race. You were talking about how black people have voted Democratic. I apologize. They voted Republican in the early 20th century. And progressively throughout the 20th century, they began to vote Democratic. Why do you think that happened?
Well, I don't know that I would characterize it as just they started to vote Democratic. I think that the movement was hijacked by the left in, really right around the time of the Civil Rights Act. We're talking about middle toward the end of the 20th century. We're talking about the Civil Rights Act, which was in, just past the halfway point in 1964, and the Democrats still opposed civil rights for African Americans at that time. What they did over the last part of the 20th century is when it really started to happen, and I know I've got a break here. We'll finish that thought on the other side of this time out, right here on the Dennis Prager Show.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Get back or I'll shoot you.
The ones left inside were the pastor and his two daughters.
If you run, I'll shoot your family. Nobody cares whether I live or die. It's bad.
I'm not gonna stand around and be a part of it anymore. Give me the gun.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
I had studied Marxist
history, beginning with Marx and Engels' Communist Manifesto from 1848. And when I first studied that and saw in section 1 of the manifesto what you can recognize as what's called the oppressor versus oppressed narrative of human history, a whole bunch of stuff that was taking place in our country began to become exceptionally clear to me. And I began to piece together a lot of the what I'll call militant impulse that was manifesting in society as time went on. And there's a victimhood ideology. There's constantly an effort by some individuals who have an agenda to pit groups of people against one another as victims or oppressed groups and oppressor groups. And we've seen very clearly over the past calendar year who the oppressor group is labeled to be and who the oppressed groups are labeled to be. And right now, under the auspices of diversity and inclusion training, as well as critical race theory and other narratives of American history that have been parading about throughout the country and showing up in our education system, all of those narratives seek to divide the American people by pitting people against one another into racial groups.
Yeah, it is
it's the white versus the black. It
used to be class, division by class. Now it's division by race, by skin color. We've only begun to scratch the surface. We're going to go deep dive on what's happening inside the U.S. military and why this man took the courageous step of writing the book Irresistible Revolution. Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Some lawyer hit a little girl.
The community is left in shock as former cancer patient Sharon Blackwell was struck by an oncoming vehicle.
Take this into evidence, sir.
I need to call my wife. You've been accused of texting while driving.
We don't make an example out of this guy, the public will crucify us.
Before you take your daughter off life support, give God room to be God.
You're not guaranteed another day, but you have today. Get back or I'll shoot you.
No one's left inside for the pastor and his 2 daughters.
If you run, I'll shoot your family. Nobody cares whether I live or die. It's bad.
I'm not going to stand around and be a part of it anymore. Give me the gun.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Las Vegas, I mean, it is open for business. It is wide open. It's unreal how different things are in a place like Las Vegas. I mean, somebody look up, Derek, see how many seats.
Okay, 33 minutes past the hour, which leaves us 27 minutes before the top of the hour. Bob France sitting in for Dennis Prager live in the ReliefFactor.com studios here in Cleveland, Ohio. I'll go back to the phone calls in a second. I want to finish my response to a previous caller who asked about why and when blacks started voting so overwhelmingly for Democrats. And, you could argue that, certainly during the time in the 30s, with the party realignment, the New Deal had a lot to do with that. Not the Green New Deal, the original New Deal. There was a movement then, but again, I'll still point to past the halfway point of the 20th century. In 1964, it was still the Republican Party pushing for civil rights. It was the Republican Party and pushing for blacks to get equal treatment under the law, and Democrats continued to oppose this. And so the question of when they started or why they started voting Democrats so overwhelmingly, the answer to that, in my opinion, is when the Democrats decided they could buy their votes by simply treating them as being less than. treat African Americans as less than, treat them as inferior, treat them as somebody who needs somebody else to help them because they can't do it themselves, and watch them vote for us in perpetuity for generations to come. And they weren't wrong. They weren't wrong, even though Donald Trump did a terrific job by Republican standards in pulling 13% of the black vote in 2020, in November of last year, and that's not taking into account all of the other irregularities and things that led to what I believe was a stolen election. But just for the sake of the numbers being what they are, even though he did a great job of pulling 13%, you're still talking 88% of Republicans voted for, of blacks voted for the Democrat candidate. And the reason why is very, very simple. They make no bones about it. White people will never give you a fair shake. White people won't pay you as much. White people will keep you down. White people won't allow you to have these jobs. White people won't allow you to live here or there. White people won't feed you well enough. We will take care of that. If you're hungry, we'll provide food for you. If you don't have a house, we'll provide housing for you. Just keep those votes coming in. And that's about the time when most of this started. Republicans have looked at African Americans for generations, decades and decades and decades, and said, here you are, offered a hand, and tried to give that hand up. And millions of African Americans said, thank you very much. And they took that hand up and they went and achieved the American dream by working, doing their own business. Don't need a government handout. I don't need your money. I don't need your food. I don't need your place to live. I've got my own. I went to college. I went to high school, I got my diploma, maybe went to college, went to work, went to serve in the military, living the American dream. Democrats said, shh, stay down there. I'll toss you some food every once in a while. I'll pay for your apartment. I'll make sure that you have the insurance you need. I'll even throw you a few extras. Just remember where this came from come voting time, okay? And sadly and unfortunately, far too many African Americans said, deal, I'll take it. Republicans want to help people never need government assistance. Democrats want people, particularly people of color, to always need and rely on government assistance. It's a very fair trade for them. We'll give you food, you give us votes. All good? All good. And the sad thing is when African Americans who get it and understand it and decry that agreement, people like the late Walter Williams, people like Thomas Sowell, younger generation sages like Larry Elder, people like Dr. Swain, I talk about these people all the time. When they try to tell people and tell black Americans they're being played, they're still bound to the Democrat plantation, mentally and psychologically, they're the ones who are accused of being anti-black, traitors to their race, Uncle Toms, and on down the line. So when did black people start voting exclusively for Democrats? When Democrats decided to treat black people like they were less than human, treat them like they were less than capable, treat them like they were less than white people. And these people who are less than can't do it themselves, we'll do it for them. And all they have to do to make sure we keep doing it is vote for us. And here we are in 2021, and it has not changed. And that's a shame. It is the Republican Party that believes in black America. It is the Republican Party that respects black America. It is the Republican Party that knows black Americans can get IDs and can open computers and can get jobs and can get degrees and go and achieve the dream. It is the Democrat Party that thinks they can't. We'll be right back.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Some lawyer hit a little girl.
The community is left in shock as former cancer patient Sharon Blackwell was struck by an oncoming vehicle.
Take this into evidence, sir.
I need to call my wife. You've been accused of texting while driving.
If we don't make an example out of this guy, the public will crucify us.
Before you take your daughter off life support, give God room to be God.
You're not guaranteed another day, but you have today.
back or I'll shoot you.
The ones left inside for the pastor and his 2 daughters.
If you run, I'll shoot your family. Nobody cares whether I live or die. It's bad.
I'm not gonna stand around and be a part of it anymore. 3. Give me the gun.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Las Vegas, I mean, it is open for business. It is wide open. It's unreal how different things are in a place like Las Vegas. I mean, somebody look up, Derek, see how many seats the O show at the Bellagio holds. How many seats are in that theater? The show is called O at the Bellagio. See how many seats it holds. It was packed. I mean, there's no social distancing going on in Las Vegas. There just isn't. Now, does that disturb you? Or does that make you happy? Does it bother you to know that there are communities that, like Las Vegas, that have a theater that I sat in and was in amazement at the Las Vegas production of O at the Bellagio with 1,800 seats, and it was packed. It was sold out. There weren't seats between other seats. There weren't empty seats blocked out with stupid X marks. And incidentally, on the topic of Las Vegas, may I respectfully suggest a must-see show if you like Vegas like I do. I don't do a whole lot of gambling. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I love the theaters, the shows. I love the hotels. I love the restaurants. I love the vibe of Las Vegas. The Magic of Jen Kramer at the Westgate is a must-see.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
We've had 6 months of the new administration. It is the farthest thing from moderation that the government has ever seen, and it is the fastest track to extremism that we've ever had elected.
But Kevin, how did I know that in advance? Why in my debate with David French did I know this and you knew this? There was no question in my mind. So the fact that this has now happened, you know, part of me wants to say, ha ha, but it's just too sad to say ha ha. This is something that I warned against and you warned against and others warned against because we knew that the consequences are devastating.
"16 minutes before the top of the hour, we continue on the Dennis Prager Show. Bob France sitting in for Dennis. Would love to have you aboard at 877-243-7776. That's 8Prager776. The Democrat control, the mind control of the black population, using the bigotry of low expectations, treating them as people who can't do things for themselves and thus beholden to the government to have them done for them, is only being propagated further by critical race theory. Marxism in action is intended to do exactly that, to continue to tell minorities that they are less than, except that the difference now is that they are specifically treated as less than by the white people who are inherently racist and have been since not only the birth of this racist country in 1619, according to their teaching, but according to their own births as well. It's been true since they were born. The world CRT proponents want young white and black children and white and black workers to think, is divided into white oppressors and non-white victims. White privilege and its unearned benefits become responsible for the economic, health, and social disparities in minority communities. Intersectionality of our social identities perpetuates systemic oppression. This is what they believe. This is what they're teaching their kids and trying to force into boardrooms, trying to force into break rooms, trying to force into classrooms. That white people are all evil, and it is their evil that victimizes black people or other people, non-white people, and non-straight people as well, because when we go into the full-on, the auspices of Marxism, we come to a lot of things other than just race. But we'll go back to the phones now, and this is going to be Able Springs, Texas. That's where we find Noah on the Dennis Prager Show. Hi, Noah. It's Bob France sitting in. Go right ahead.
Hey, no, I just wanted to say that I find this critical race idea hilarious. I mean, in the time that we're in right now, this is what they're pushing. And I was telling the screener that I've actually had, someone put me down because of my, what I was. I'm Hispanic, and I have never once in my life, let that change my perspective and go, oh, okay, the whole United States is racist. I mean, you're going to always have someone who dislikes you for whatever reason, whether it be your skin color or where you live or whatever it is. And so I just think it's hilarious that they're trying to push this in the schools for children to learn.
Yeah, I would go along with you, Noah, with every word except hilarious, because it's not funny, and I know you don't mean it as in ha-ha funny, but it's dangerous is what it is. It's extremely dangerous.
It's very
to think,
dangerous.
And a person like you said you're Latino, correct, or Hispanic?
Yes, and I've experienced that. Yes, I've experienced it a couple times, and like I said, by no means do I look at the United States as racist at all, and how anybody could view the United States like that with so much opportunity for any ethnicity or any skin color is beyond me.
What I would ask a person like you, as a brown person, just using it the way the left describes it, it's brown and black people versus white people. So as a brownish person, is there any other nation on earth where you would feel as comfortable and feel as opportunistic and optimistic about your chances of earning wealth and living a happy, successful life? Is there another country that would be better for a brown person like you than this one?
No, absolutely not.
That's exactly the point that I've been trying to make, and I'm glad you said it, Noah. Thank you so much. There is not a rush of brown and black people to the border to get out of this country. There is a rush of brown and black people at our border to get into this country. There's a reason. No matter what the left wants you to believe. We'll go to Queens, New York, and this is Rabbi Minash. You are on I hope I said it correctly, the Dennis Prager Show. Rabbi, did I say your name correctly?
Yeah, Menashe is how you pronounce it. But
Menashe. I did not see the A. My apology. I guess it's an E, but it's an okay. I got you. But thank you, Rabbi. Go ahead.
It's the way it's pronounced. It's okay. I answer to anything that's somewhat close to it. Anyway, what I wanted to comment on, Bob, is earlier, just a little while ago, you're speaking about that when 9/11 took place, that there was a short, span of unity in this country. You were commenting on the Matt Walsh article. Mm-hmm. However, I don't believe there really was as much unity as many people think that there was. It's just that the Democrat leaders at that time in the mainstream media felt it was important to put that theme out there, when in fact the radical left was not unified with the rest of the country. Even then, they just did not have control over the Democrat Party as they do right now, and they didn't have weren't as obvious and as overt as they are. At that point, 20 years ago, I was serving in a congregation in Colorado, in a college town, and I was serving in a congregation in which was dominated by leftist college professor types. And when 9/11 occurred, they did not stand in unity with all of America at all. As a matter of fact, that led, the events up, even leading up to that. There was intifada going on in Israel. They were taking the side of what I call the fake Palestinians, and there's a prayer called Kaddish, which is said, memorial prayer for the dead. They wanted Kaddish to be said for the Palestinian who died, the terrorist who was a suicide bomber. So you can see what their perspective was. 9/11 occurred. They even then, Hadassah, which is a women's organization, and most congregations have, they had men had to be members of Hadassah. So they invited me to the Hadassah meeting that took place on the morning of 9/11. I showed up, and they were blaming the United States and Israel for 9/11 and taking the side of the terrorists even then. Following that, there was a rally at the local college campus, which was supposed to be non-political. I was asked to get up and say a prayer message, along with some of the people from the local Hillel chapter. The leftist professors got up on the stage there and condemned the United States and condemned Israel. I was overheard in a discussion with somebody later saying the United States and Israel should be eradicating terrorists. A leftist female Christian clergy overheard me. She was friends with people who were on the board of my congregation, reported to them that I was advocating killing Muslims. And they called me to this this bizarre Star Chamber meeting where they kind of put me
Rabbi,
on
I
trial.
need to interrupt because I only have 15 seconds left before my hard break here, and I apologize for that. No, that's okay, but I wanted to respond to it just very, very briefly. You're right. We were not as, quote-unquote, unified as we look back on it and want to wish we were. There was a big difference, and I'll follow up after this timeout.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Two things are happening. One is that parents across the board are starting to speak up and not take this anymore. You've seen in Loudoun, Virginia, on the critical race theory issue just the last couple of weeks, school board meetings where parents have lined up by the hundreds. They are unloading on these school boards. I have seen people activate in ways that I didn't see them in the prosperous years of President Trump. People are mad. This is not the way life goes. And to your point about girls that are competing with all of their might and they're falling short, they're not just giving up on the dream of winning that race. They're losing college scholarship opportunities. 2 years ago in Connecticut, in the high school girls track division, 15 state all-time records were shattered by two boys that ran as girls in that division.
But the leaders of the state let this happen, Kevin. Can you imagine adult grown men and women elected to these positions, intelligent professional people, let this happen? Those people should be hung out to dry. Those people should have people go to their homes and say, demand that either you change this or you need to resign.
What is the key between those local officials and the Biden administration? I mean, Biden came into office and said, we're gonna not just protect transgenders' ability to compete in women's divisions, we're gonna expand it. And he's tried to force down executive orders on the public schools across the country to adopt it. They haven't all gone with it, and some states are fighting it pretty aggressively. Florida and Texas have told him to go pound sand. That's what should be happening.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
This is the destruction of a fair and independent judiciary, and this is using ultimate power to try to destroy political opponents.
100%, Charlie. And it's not like this is the only example. I mean, listen, if you've been watching for the last 5 years, look at the FBI. Look at what they were doing. Nothing happens. They can lie before Congress. They can go and do a witch hunt. They can all know that it's BS. They can all get on TV and act as political pundits and talk about things in a way that they know to not be correct. You saw that, right? They testified before Congress. No, there was nothing there. But on TV every night, they pretended as though Russia was a real thing.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Okay, 5 minutes before the top of the hour, short segment here. I just want to follow up on the last caller, the rabbi from Queens, who made a very strong point. He said that we were not as united as perhaps we like to think we were 20 years ago in the aftermath of 9/11. And I said we were briefly united. It didn't last long. He said it really wasn't even as united as you think. And I think he's right. If the internet had been in existence in the manner that it is now, 20 years ago in 2001, I think we would have a better example that there was no unity, that there were people defending the terrorists, defending Al-Qaeda, defending Palestinians, defending all of the put-down Arabs and Muslims in the world, and so on and so forth. And remember, it didn't take long for the left to sit all of this at the feet of George W. Bush anyway. Inside job. Bush and Cheney did it. Look at this, look at that, look at this, look at that. And we didn't have Twitter, and we didn't have Facebook, and we didn't have, all of the other elements that we have now to throw stones at one another. We had, I'm trying to remember 2001. We had email. I was in about my 4th year of radio. I think I was still taking faxes on the air. Old-time radio hosts will remember this. You remember that? When you would say, here's the phone number, and if you'd like to fax your opinion to us, here's the fax number. And then an intern would come running in with a stack of paper with fax comments on it to you. Sometimes they're just middle fingers taking photocopied of somebody who hates you. But you remember those things? But then we got some email. We were starting to get email at that time for our shows. But I think that was about it. I don't think there was any texting going on in any great depth in 2001. We didn't have the opportunity to show how divided we were, so we just kind of, hey, the news would show a picture of, President Trump throwing out the first pitch at the World Series game in New York, and everybody cheered, so therefore reunited as a country. I don't think we were as united as perhaps we would like to believe that we were. We look back at that and say, boy, look at that. This country, it took something terrible for us to come together. Did we really come together? I think the rabbi's right. We kind of didn't. We just kind of like to, romanticize that, I guess, to say, look, we can do it again. We came together before in a time of great tragedy, and we can do it again. And hopefully without the tragedy. But I don't know. And I think Matt Walsh is right. And I think the rabbi was right. I think there are some people with a worldview that we simply cannot want to be associated with. We're never going to unite with those people because we have absolutely zero common ground. Hour number 3 of the Dennis Prager Show is coming up. I would still love to hear from you. 877, 877-243-7776. Right back.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here, if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Yesterday, General Milley told a congressional hearing that there is no chance, very unlikely and very little motivation for the People's Republic of China on this, the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, to assault Taiwan in the near term. Quote, there's no reason to do it militarily, and they know that. So I think the probability is probably low in the immediate near-term future. Your reaction, Senator Cotton?
Well, I think that's right. Up through the end of the Beijing Olympics in February. Russia didn't invade Crimea in the 8 months before the Sochi Olympics in 2014. They invaded it 4 days after those Olympics ended.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Surprise.
Sharon and I.
Sharon and you what?
Things just happened.
My girlfriend and my best friend.
You got 30 days to grow up, son.
Nathan Hanning, it is good to have you home.
Nona, it's Nathan.
Well, you don't mind my giving her your room, do you?
Really though, thanks for thinking of me for this position.
I thought about you first. Come on, growing up, I had a huge crush on you.
There are things that we all need to change about ourselves, but we can't blame God because He helps us change.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Anyway, you were talking about Bill Cosby, and I kind of disagreed with you about, you were saying about all the women. I might say maybe, what is it, 18 women?
Oh, no, it's close to 50 women that have made allegations.
50?
50, 50.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you believe all of them are
Well,
telling the
you think all 50 are lying, including Beverly Johnson, one of the first black major models in America? She said he also gave her drugs and tried to rape her.
I'm a woman, and what I'm saying is, and they're in Hollywood. He's a high profile man,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted to be alone with him. They might not have wanted his advances, but it's kind of
Lynn, please. There's no doubt that because he was famous and rich, he attracted women. The question is, did he drug them and have sex with them? And that's known as rape.
And the question is, let me answer that. That's what I'm saying. If they drank anything that he had,
right,
they willingly drank it.
Okay. Now, Lynn, hold on a second. The reason Bill Cosby got released is because the prior prosecutor apparently entered into some sort of deal with him and said, you're not going to be criminally prosecuted if you testify honestly in the civil trial. And in the civil trial, years ago, he testified and admitted that he gave that particular woman a drug in order to have sex with her. He admitted it under oath.
One woman. Okay, one woman. Yes, but not.
How many does it take?
Well, I just saying, I know I'm a woman. I know women. I'm not saying some of it didn't happen, but some of them are scorned because they thought they was going to get something out of it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
What is your message to those who think this isn't a big deal or who feel cowed and intimidated? What do you say to them?
Anytime you say something like what I'm about to say, I'm sure it can be abused and misused, so I'll be very careful in how I say it. I've never read Hitler's Mein Kampf, but I've picked it up recently in the past week because I'm interested in learning everything I can about history. After spending just a day with his Mein Kampf, the spirit and essence of his race hatred that shows up in that book, a set of two books, is very similar to what I'm seeing show up in How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
I want to talk about what's happening in New York with Letitia James and what I consider to be a political persecution unlike anything, I think, in American political history. How are you guys dealing with this? And do you guys see this as, you obviously said this last night, but as a continuation of almost this 5-year political witch hunt?
100%. I mean, it's pretty clear when the Attorney General of a state, without any information, literally campaigns on saying, "Hey, we're going to investigate, we're going to lock them up, we're going to do this, that, and the other." It's pretty amazing that they can get away with, and then they do it, and then they do it for 5 years. And the reality is this: there's no recourse. There's no one keeping them in check, Charlie. They can just do this. You have nowhere to appeal it to. You're going to appeal it to a leftist judge in New York who feels the same way. They're utilizing.
We are bringing the funk to middays. How about that? I like it. Usually I do the funky stuff on the Larry Elder Show. But I will take Heat Wave. Any time of the day that it is offered to me, I will take Heat Wave. Great song choice. Thank you, Sean. Well done, sir. Third and final hour of the Dennis Prager Show is underway. 6 minutes past the hour. Thanks for being with us. My name is Bob France. I'm in for Dennis. Dennis is sick. He's got a summer cold. Probably going to be just fine for tomorrow. These kind of things happen. They come and they go. But Dennis is off today, and I'm glad to be with you live in the ReliefFactor.com studios here in Cleveland, Ohio. My home base is AM 1420 The Answer. You can listen to it anytime you would like. I'm on the air daily from 9 to 11 Eastern Time by tapping up WHK Radio, WHKRadio.com. I would certainly love to hear from more people from around the country when we're doing the local show. I'm going to go right back to the issue of CRT and division in America. And this is, by the way, what the Marxists envision is division in America. Understand, it's not just race. Critical theory isn't also intended to just be one. In other words, it's not like, all right, we've convinced everybody that critical race theory is how we should all be taught, and then it's over, and then that's the way things go. The idea is to continue the fight. The idea under Marxist principles is to continue the division and the battle. Because the more we are at each other's throats about these things, the more the society that it is inflicted upon collapses. And the more that it collapses, obviously the more it can be rebuilt in full-on Marxist theory. So I'm going to go back to that in a moment and CRT's role in that. And this largely, if you just turn the radio on, by the way, this largely was influenced, this topic of discussion, by what happened yesterday in Cuba. As Cuban oppressed peoples rose up in dozens of Cuban cities and protested and are calling for an end to the communist regime that has kept them so oppressed and depressed and censored and starving and ill for these many decades of the Castro regime. Now, Fidel is gone. His brother Raul is retired. The new leader is no better. And the communist oppression of the people of Cuba continues. And the reason we're talking about all this is the Cubans wish they were here. Those Cuban protesters are waving American flags all over the place, saying this is what we want to be, this is where we want to be. Meanwhile, here in the United States, America's professional victim class, the American left, and they bring victims of all varieties along for the ride. They look at the same flag the Cubans are waving as a sign of liberty and say that's a sign of hatred. That's a symbol of hatred and oppression. It's a symbol of white supremacy. It doesn't represent people of color, brown and black. It's remarkable. Privileged Democrats in America hate the American flag. Oppressed Cubans wave proudly the American flag. It's a remarkable dichotomy. I'll come back to that. But and if you're on hold about that, I promise you I will get to your phone call and I will take your phone call on that issue. But I just want to throw this one out there too because it's important to me. I represent an organization called Citizens for Free Speech, CFFS. It's online at citizensforfreespeech.org. I'm the National Communications Director for CFFS. It was founded by a great man named Patrick Wood. He's the Executive Director. We have a brochure that we are trying to put out all over the country. As Joe Biden threatens to send people door to door with a needle to be jammed into your arm. And it's not literally that way, but the goal is to send people door to door to convince the unvaccinated to go get it done, to bully them, to threaten them, to intimidate them, quite frankly. There is a brochure, a trifold brochure that we have printed up at Citizens for Free Speech. It was written by a renowned neurosurgeon by the name of Dr. Russell Blaylock, and it's all about informed consent. If your place of work or your place of education is trying to force upon you a vaccination, telling you that if you don't get vaccinated, then you can lose your position as a student on a campus, as an employee in a building or business, or whatever the case might be, you need to make them aware of informed consent. According to state and federal law, you must voluntarily give your informed consent prior to receiving any drug that is not approved by the FDA. And guess what? The Moderna, the Pfizer, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccines are all being used under emergency authorization, not under FDA approval. The information needed for informed consent must declare that it is an unapproved vaccine for which there has been no long-term testing for safety and has never been used as a vaccine before. 2, there are possible side effects that have been so far observed since the release of the vaccine for public use and all potential long-term effects that may occur. This is based on research on animals and limited human testing, as well as post-release VAERS data. And 3, it informs you of the scientific data and opinion of scientists, as far as possible, the immunological consequences of this experimental vaccine, and that these side effects, should these side effects occur, there may be nothing that can be done to reverse these problems. And finally, the money line. You have the right to refuse any drug that is unapproved by the FDA, and you are legally protected from discrimination if you decline such drugs. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I'm not telling you to not get vaccinated. It's a personal choice. Unlike the left, which uses abortion to offer the my body, my choice argument, which is not true, because it's not your body. It's the little body that is growing inside of your body, and they have a choice too. But when it comes to vaccines, it literally is just your body, and it is your choice. And according to federal law, you cannot be discriminated against for making the choice not to be vaccinated. If you choose to do it, go for it. I will salute you and say happy health to you if that's what happens. If you don't want to get a vaccine, I will tell you don't do it, and I will salute you and say happy health. Or whatever happens, happens. The fact of the matter is the federal government cannot coerce you, and private businesses cannot discriminate or punish you for choosing not to have that vaccine. If you want more information, go to citizensforfreespeech.org, citizensforfreespeech.org. These brochures are being offered in packets of 25 for a few bucks shipping cost. Distribute these to people that you know, and anybody else is trying to shame or guilt or bully you or intimidate you into getting a vaccine that you don't want. Share that. Again, if you want to use it, great. If you don't, don't. But do not feel as if you are compelled to do so, because that's not how this works. All right, let's go back to the phones. I do want to get more into CRT and the discussion of the day. We'll go to Tim, who's calling us from Moore Park, California. Tim, you're on the Dennis Prager Show. Thanks for joining us. Go right ahead.
I'm Tim Callum-Carrion. Do some black people vote Democrats because some Republicans say O.J. Simpson is guilty? And if Larry Elder wants to win the election, have him stop saying O.J. Simpson is guilty.
Well, I don't know what Larry Elder has said about that. I don't know how anybody votes based on that. But I will tell you what Bob France says. O.J. Simpson was guilty. Okay? Thanks for the call. Michael Michael Goldstein, my friend from Proclaiming Justice to the Nations in Cleveland, Ohio. Michael, how are you today?
I'm fine, Bob. I'm happy to hear you substituting for Dennis today. I'm sorry Dennis is under the weather, however.
As am I. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit going back to the Civil Rights Acts of the 1960s,
okay,
and how the two parties voted on them. I want to go back 100 years before that to the Civil Rights Amendments to the United States Constitution. In Congress at that time, in 1865, the Southern Democrats were not yet back in Congress. They hadn't been readmitted to Congress. So the voting was all done by Union Northern Democrats and, of course, Union Republicans. The 13th Amendment to end slavery was passed only by Republicans. Every Democrat, 100% of them, voted against ending slavery. The 14th Amendment, giving former slaves, all United States citizens, due process of law and equal protection of the laws, passed by 100% Republicans. Not one Democrat voted for them. And these are Northern Democrats. And the Voting Rights Act, the 15th Amendment, was the same thing. That was a constitutional amendment to allow former slaves to vote as citizens of the United States.
Hey, Michael, I'm coming up against our hard break here. I'm going to put you on hold. Because I've got a follow-up question for you with everything you're telling us right now about the amendments. But stay there. We'll come right back. Copy that.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Yesterday, General Milley told a congressional hearing that there is no chance, very unlikely and very little motivation for the People's Republic of China on this, the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, to assault Taiwan in the near term. Quote, there's no reason to do it militarily, and they know that. So I think the probability is probably low in the immediate near-term future. Your reaction, Senator Cotton?
Well, I think that's right. Up through the end of the Beijing Olympics in February, Russia didn't invade Crimea, and 8 months before the Sochi Olympics in 2014, they invaded it 4 days after those Olympics ended.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Surprise! Sharon and I.
Sharon and you what?
Things just happened.
My girlfriend and my best friend.
You got 30 days to grow up, son.
Nathan Hannigan, it is good to have you home.
Nona, it's Nathan.
Well, you don't mind my giving her your room, do you?
Really though, thanks for taking me for this position.
I thought about you first. Come on, growing up, I had a huge crush on you.
There are things that we all need to change about ourselves, but we can't blame God because He helps us change.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
You were talking about Bill Cosby, and I kind of disagreed with you about, you were saying about all the women. I might say maybe 18 women?
Oh, no, it's close to 50 women that have made allegations.
50?
50, 50.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you believe all of them are
Well,
telling the truth?
you think all 50 are lying, including Beverly Johnson, one of the first black major models in America? She said he also gave her drugs and tried to rape her.
I'm a woman, and what I'm saying is, and they're in Hollywood. He's a high-profile man,
mm-hmm.
and they wanted to be alone with him. They might not have wanted his advances, but it's kind of
Lynn, please. There's no doubt that because he was famous and rich, he attracted women. The question is, did he drug them and have sex with them? And that's known as rape.
And the question is, let me answer that. That's what I'm saying. If they drank anything that he had, they willingly drink it.
Okay. Now, Lynn, hold on a second. The reason Bill Cosby got released is because the prior prosecutor apparently entered into some sort of deal with him and said, you're not going to be criminally prosecuted if you testify honestly in the civil trial. And in the civil trial, years ago, he testified and admitted that he gave that particular woman a drug in order to have sex with her. He admitted it under oath.
One woman. Okay, one woman. Yeah, but not.
How many does it take?
Well, I just saying, I know I'm a woman. I know women. I'm not saying some of it didn't happen, but some of them are scorned because they thought they was going to get something out of it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
"21 minutes after the hour. Hey, Bob France here for Dennis Prager, inviting you to join Dennis and Mike Gallagher for a 10-day tour in and through the land of Israel. This fall, come along with Salem Media Group and our travel partner, Inspiration Cruises and Tours, to get firsthand experience into the Holy Land. Israel is opening up to travelers as the country gets back to normal. Dennis is so excited to return to Israel, wants you to join him and Mike from October 27th to November 5th. Walk ancient pathways, experience key historical and political sites, sail on the Sea of Galilee, and so much more. It'll be 10 days of unforgettable memories. This is the year to tour the Holy Land. Our travel partner has a team on hand to answer your questions about deposits, health and safety, what is required to enter the country, and more. Together, we're making every effort to make this the best tour ever. To register, call 855-565-5519 or book conveniently online at standwithisraeltour.com. That's standwithisraeltour.com. I want to go back to the phones now. Michael Goldstein, who is the Ohio leader of the Proclaiming Justice to the Nation, Ohio director of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. And Michael was just giving us a remedial history lesson about who voted for what when it comes to the amendments in 1865, when it comes to freeing the slaves, the 13th Amendment ending slavery, the 14th Amendment, etc. Michael, you wanted to finish that thought. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. The 15th Amendment ended slavery. That, by the way, was passed by Congress before the Lincoln assassination. It was his amendment, but ratified by the states after the assassination, which ended slavery under the Constitution. The 14th Amendment of the Constitution stated that the former slaves could not be deprived by the United States or by any state of their life, liberty, or property without due process of law, or they have equal protection of the laws. And then the 15th Amendment was the Voting Rights Act that said that the former slaves had the right to vote, and that couldn't be abridged by anyone. So,
and the point you were making about that is who supported those and who did not.
Yeah. Well, remember that in Congress at that time, the southern states were not back yet, so there were no Confederate senators who would come back in or representatives. It's all the North, all the Union. Every Democrat voted against those amendments to the United States Constitution that would have given civil rights to the black folks. Every Republican voted for them. So 100 years later, with the Civil Rights Act, it wasn't as unanimous, but proportionally to their proportions in Congress, the Republicans way outvoted the Democrats in passing those. So the party, the Democrats,
Michael, but what the left
always
argues, Michael, if I may, what the left always argues, though, is that there was a realignment and that people who were Republicans and who were anti-slavery became, Democrats who were anti-slavery and pro-civil rights, and it was the Democrats who were pro-slavery and anti-civil rights that became the modern Republican Party. So they're basically saying it was all reversed, and that the real heroes of the Civil Rights Act in 1964, and then indeed the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments are the real heroes, are today's modern-day Democrat Party.
Yeah, well, they lie.
You're right, they do.
They lie.
Give me any more of a response?
No, it's just not true. If you can look through the documents, it's just not, it didn't happen that way. What happened was in the 1960s, 100 years after the Civil War, the Democrats under the Great Society came into the northern cities and ruined what had been a thriving black community for 100 years. Even in the face of Jim Crow in the South and discrimination in the North, the black family was intact, the black community was intact, black businesses were intact, and they came in and the Democratic Party got everybody on welfare and separated the fathers from the income. Fathers were kicked out of the home if the mothers had welfare. And the government became the new fathers. They ruined the black community, they ruined the black family, and they did it on purpose.
Yeah, that's precisely my
So
answer
if you're looking
to a
for
previous caller about
institutional
this.
race, if you're looking for institutional racism, it was the Democratic Party that was the institution that was racist.
And still is, quite frankly,
1960s.
still is. Remember, this is the party that, that is backed by the Black Lives Matter organization. And again, refer to the organization, not the phrasing. Of course, Black Lives Matter, but the organization doesn't care about black lives. They love the idea of single-parent households. They love the idea of fathers not being a part of the black family because it continues to further the need for government intervention, government, subsidies, whether it be on housing and food and utilities and whatever the case might be, which, of course, keeps the black uneducated black kids who aren't graduating from high school because they don't have a father there helping to crack down on them, etc. It keeps them beholden to the Democrats in power for their next subsidies. They've got a racket going here that has been going on for literally decades, maybe centuries.
Yeah, well, they said in the 1960s that the purpose of this was to get some money into the black community and give them a leg up so they could bring themselves up out of poverty. But, when you have a program, you check it, evaluate it every couple of years to see if it's working. It wasn't doing that, but they knew it wouldn't do that. Daniel Patrick Moynihan, who's one of their own philosophers, even legislators, told them it wasn't going to work, but they have been doubling down on it ever since. That means it's intentional.
But they never intended for it to work, Michael. That's the thing. It's not like they didn't know it wasn't going to work and didn't check in on it, as you say. They didn't want it to work. They wanted that money to be used and essentially used up or used through. And rather than being used to build up, as you say, the intention was supposed to be, they wanted it used so that they would come back and say, do you have any more? Can you give us more? And by the way, we'll keep voting for you as long as you give us more. Like I said, it's a cycle that they perpetuated. They never intended for it to actually lift black people out of poverty and out of the circumstances they found themselves in. That's what the Republicans wanted to do, was to literally help them get up and out of their circumstances.
Well, that's right. And the Republicans haven't been given a chance to do it.
Well, I don't know. They had a
program.
chance during the Trump administration, and what happened? Record low black poverty, record low black unemployment. They actually have a chance. When they have a chance to do it, they do it. That rising tide that lift all boats lifted all black and brown people, as much, if not more, by a percentage or proportionally, than even whites benefited during the Trump administration.
Right. As I said to Dennis when he had a show on a couple of years ago about why blacks aren't voting for Republicans in the inner cities, the people were calling and talking about free stuff. It wasn't free stuff. No Republicans are running in the inner cities. Very few. That's true. One who has, but most do not. There's no one there are no Republicans who are willing to go in and campaign when, in fact, they don't stand a chance of winning.
That's a topic.
So
that's a topic for an entire 3-hour show, Michael. Yeah, why blacks don't vote for Republicans is a topic for a 3-hour show, and why Republicans don't run in black districts is another one. And just like you and I have discussed casually, why American Jews don't vote for Republicans in large numbers either. You and I have talked about that too. But that'll be a topic for another day because I've got a jet hard out here. Michael Goldstein, thank you for the call. We've got more of your calls coming right up. Copy that.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
talking about Bill Cosby, and I kind of disagreed with you about, you were saying about all the women. I might say maybe 18 women?
Oh, no, it's close to 50 women that have made allegations.
50?
50, 5-0.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you believe all of them are
Well, you think all 50 are lying, including Beverly Johnson, one of the first black major models in America? She said he also gave her drugs and tried to rape her.
I'm a woman, and what I'm saying is, and they're in Hollywood. He's a high-profile man,
mm-hmm.
and they wanted to be alone with him. They might not have wanted his advances, but it's kind of
Lynn, please. There's no doubt that because he was famous and rich, he attracted women. The question is, did he drug them and have sex with them? And that's known as rape.
And the question is, let me answer that. That's what I'm saying. If they drank anything that he had,
right.
They willingly drink it.
Okay. Now, Lynn, hold on a second. The reason Bill Cosby got released is because the prior prosecutor apparently entered into some sort of deal with him and said, you're not going to be criminally prosecuted if you testify honestly in the civil trial. And in the civil trial, years ago, he testified and admitted that he gave that particular woman a drug in order to have sex with her. He admitted it under oath.
One woman. Okay, one woman. Yes, but not.
How many does it take?
Well, I just saying, I know I'm a woman. I know women. I'm not saying some of it didn't happen, but some of them are scorned because they thought they was going to get something out of it.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
What is your message to those who think this isn't a big deal or who feel cowed and intimidated? What do you say to them?
Anytime you say something like what I'm about to say, I'm sure it can be abused and misused, so I'll be very careful in how I say it. I've never read Hitler's Mein Kampf, but I've picked it up recently in the past week because I'm interested in learning everything I can about history. After spending just a day with his Mein Kampf, the spirit and essence of his race hatred that shows up in that book, a set of 2 books, is very similar to what I'm seeing show up in How to Be an Anti-Racist.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
I want to talk about what's happening in New York with Letitia James and what I consider to be a political persecution unlike anything, I think, in American political history. How are you guys dealing with this? And do you guys see this as, you obviously said this last night, but as a continuation of almost this 5-year political witch hunt?
100%. I mean, it's pretty clear when the Attorney General of a state, without any information, literally campaigns on saying, "Hey, we're going to investigate, we're going to lock them up, we're going to do this, that, and the other." It's pretty amazing that they can get away with it, and then they do it, and then they do it for 5 years. And the reality is this: there's no recourse. There's
27 minutes before the top of the hour as we continue on the Dennis Prager Show. Bob France sitting in for Dennis, who is a little under the weather today. Should be back and good to go tomorrow. If not, we'll see what happens. But we wish him, of course, good health and a speedy recovery. Phone lines are open at 877-243-7776. That's 8-PRAGER-776. Let's get a few more phone calls in here. We'll go to Prescott, Arizona. Mike, you're on the Dennis Prager Show. Bob sitting in for Dennis. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Bob. I'll try to be real brief. You guys have nailed everything, and Michael Goldstein was brilliant. You guys are really nailing this topic. The truth to get out is so important. I just wanted to add that Carol Swain, you mentioned Dr. Swain, she has a 5-minute video on Prager videos, and she kills the myth of them switching parties in the 60s. So that's important to note. And then the welfare. I think it's Folsom's book from Hillsdale College. It's called New Deal or Raw Deal, and he mentions how you could see the blacks voting Republican as they should all the way up into the 30s, like 95%. Then with the New Deal and the introduction of what they call relief, they started to migrate. By the 50s, it was at a tipping point, 50-50. And then the Great Society, got all of that there. Now they're 95% for the Republicans. So for the Democrats. I just want to add those few points. But you guys are doing great. Thank you.
I appreciate that. And you make some very good points, and I appreciate it, Mike. And by the way, it's funny you mentioned Carol Swain in her video completely debunking the argument in the 60s about the switching of parties. I was going to play a Carol Swain video from PragerU, actually an interview. It's not the official video, the PragerU 5-minute video, but it was an interview with Will Witt about CRT and debunking the 1619 Project and the danger of CRT. So it's kind of funny you brought that up. I think great minds think alike, because I'm going to try to share that with you in the next segment. I don't have enough time to do that in this segment. Let's go next to... How about Joan calling us from Seneca, South Carolina, I believe it is. Hi, Joan. It's Bob sitting in for Dennis. Go right ahead.
Hi, Bob. It's so wonderful. I'm so happy that you took my call. I love Dennis's program. I listen to him all the time. I told your screener, I love that dissertation that you made about the so-called experimental drug vaccine. Is there any way that you could email me what you said? I have a few friends that are beating me up and down because I'm 84 years old and I refuse to take this crappy stuff to put it in my body. So I would love to
here's what I would do. Obviously, you said you have email because you asked me to email it to you. So that means you can get online and go to a website, right?
Yes.
Okay, the website to go to, Joan, is very simple. It's Citizens for Free Speech. There's no abbreviations, no half letters or anything. It's just citizensforfreespeech.org. Not the number 4, but FOR, citizensforfreespeech.org. If you go to that website and you click the tab at the top, and I believe it'll say CFFS Store. If you scroll down, you'll find these brochures that I'm talking about informed consent. And it's right in the first side of the informed consent link there. You'll see exactly what I read to you, at least I think you will. And if not, if you can't see it exactly there, then you may have to order one, of the packets. But that's the best place to do it. Rather than me emailing it to you, everybody can just go to citizensforfreespeech.org. And again, if you want to order those, they come in packs of 25, and the cost is like enough for shipping and printing. That's it. There's no profit motive here. It's a nonprofit organization that I belong to, and I am actually a member of. And I'm actually a part of the team. I'm the communications director for Citizens for Free Speech. But you print that and share it with friends and neighbors who try to tell you to take the vaccine if it's not something you want to do. You don't have to do. And it should never be mandated, and no one should ever be discriminated against for choosing not to take this experimental drug cocktail. And that's what it is. Dan, and by the way, no one should also be berated or criticized for choosing to take it. That's the beauty of freedom. You can make your own choice. Dan is in Hopkins, Minnesota. Dan, you're on the air. Go ahead.
Bob, love your show.
Thank you.
You're so bold. It's so wonderful to hear. Say, with Donald Trump in the office, all these problems that all of us are really upset about largely go away. But I will say, my friend, to be honest, I'm just a little disappointed in Salem why more hosts aren't talking about all of the forensic evidence, all the evidence that Mike Lindell has uncovered about the election. We all know it was a fraud.
There is, and I'll tell you what. Here's the thing, Dan. I know a lot of people, and I'm one of them. I believe in President Trump's victory. I believe it was stolen from him. But I know that no matter what evidence is presented, it's going to go by the wayside because the courts have said that's it. We're not going to hear these cases. And I think that's why most of us are looking forward to 2024 rather than back to November of 2020. That's the best I can answer. Thanks for the call. We'll be back.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Las Vegas,
I mean, it is open for business. It is wide open. It's unreal how different things are in a place like Las Vegas. I mean, somebody look up, Derek, see how many seats the O show at the Bellagio holds. How many seats are in that theater? The show is called O at the Bellagio. See how many seats it holds. It was packed. I mean, there's no social distancing going on in Las Vegas. There just isn't. Now, does that disturb you? Or does that make you happy? Does it bother you to know that there are communities that, like Las Vegas, that have a theater that I sat in and was in amazement at the Las Vegas production of O at the Bellagio with 1,800 seats, and it was packed. It was sold out. There weren't seats between other seats. There weren't empty seats blocked out with stupid X marks. And incidentally, on the topic of Las Vegas, may I respectfully suggest a must-see show if you like Vegas like I do. I don't do a whole lot of gambling. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I love the theaters, the shows. I love the hotels. I love the restaurants. I love the vibe of Las Vegas. The Magic of Jen Kramer at the Westgate is a must-see.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
We've had 6 months of the new administration. It is the farthest thing from moderation that the government has ever seen, and it is the fastest track to extremism that we've ever had elected.
But Kevin, how did I know that in advance? Why in my debate with David French did I know this and you knew this? There was no question in my mind. So the fact that this has now happened, you know, part of me wants to say, ha ha, but it's just too sad to say ha ha. This is something that I warned against and you warned against and others warned against because we knew that the consequences are devastating.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
There's about 57 Muslim states in the world. There's one Jewish state.
The massive ingathering of Jews in the last 150 years back to the land is absolutely unprecedented.
They say that there's no greater sign of redemption coming than the Jewish people returning to the hills of Judea.
As a Christian, I've always supported Israel's claim to the Holy Land. To me, the Palestinians were just getting in the way of God's plan.
300,000 Palestinians are unemployed.
In spite of all the years of conflict, there's hope here if you know where to look for it.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Okay, it's 40, let's do it the other direction, 16 minutes before the top of the hour. I almost gave you the number past the hour, but 16 minutes left. I want to try to give you a couple of sound clips here from Dr. Carol Swain, because, again, we're talking about how, and this is my true belief in this, the best pushback against critical race theory can't come from white people because we look self-defensive. It's got to come from black people, and it's got to come from prominent, intelligent black experts like Dr. Carol Swain. And Dr. Swain did an interview. First of all, she has done a few different Prager University videos, so that goes without saying. But in this particular case, it was an interview that she did with Will Witt about one of those, and that is the 1619 Project, and how dangerous the 1619 Project is because it is filled with misinformation. It's filled with half-truths, lies, whatever you want to call it. So I want to try to give you some of this, but I also want to get as many more calls in as I can. So let's take the calls, and I'll try to save Carol Swain to wrap us up here at the end if I can do that, okay? We'll go to the Twin Cities in Minnesota. I think that's our second straight call for Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. But Dr. Chris, you're on the Dennis Prager Show. Doctor, good afternoon. What's on your mind today?
Well, I'm an orthodontist, and I see a lot of patients. I'm considered one of the highest risks of all the medical dental specialties because I see 60 to 80 people a day, usually within 12 inches to 18 inches of their face, and they're not wearing masks. And so I've been on hydroxychloroquine since September of last year, and I had COVID in November, and I hardly even knew I had it. I told the screener the only reason I knew I had it is because Trader Joe's has a policy where you can return your wine if you don't like it. And we were drinking wine one night. I told my wife, wow, this is so bad. We're taking this back. And my oldest daughter, and my wife said, no, it tastes really good. And then I knew there was something wrong. But other than that,
you had lost your sense of taste, right?
Yeah, I lost my sense of taste. So that was really all I had. And I know people have other complications beyond that, but the reason I called is because my daughter's in the Civil Air Patrol, and as a minor, they have to do a thing called encampment, and they go for 10 days, usually at a military base, and it's a really great experience. And I'm also a pilot, and I'm also in the Civil Air Patrol. And this year, they've told the kids that if they're not vaccinated, they're going to be segregated, and they have to all wear masks. They're not going to be able to participate in half the stuff. And people should be aware that these things are happening, and this is really destructive to everything that America stands for. And it's just scary because it's going to start impacting people directly, quickly, if people don't act. So I just wanted to pass that on.
Well, I'm glad you did, and I understand. And thanks for the call. I understand the point. You probably are the most in the most danger of really any profession when you're a dentist, because you're right. You're right up in the faces and in the open mouths, the unmasked open mouths of people. And if there's ever going to be any particle expectorants, it's going to be from your patient. So I completely understand, and I appreciate your larger point. There was didn't even know I had it, because I was on hydroxychloroquine as a preventative, just like President Trump suggested, but of course was shot down by his political enemies. And thus, a very highly effective drug was, taken away, had the emergency authorization taken away from it by the FDA, all to spite Donald Trump. And I wonder how many people got very, very sick because they couldn't have hydroxychloroquine when they could have. I wonder how many people died because of that. Yeah. Thanks for the call. David is in Sacramento on the Dennis Prager Show. Hi, David. It's Bob France sitting in. Go ahead.
Hi there. I think the solution to what you guys are talking about is basically if people would just patronize businesses owned by Christian owners, most of these problems would evaporate much quicker than anyone realizes. Thank you.
Thank you for the phone call. I appreciate it. Let's go to Gene in Cleveland. All right, another hometowner here. Hi, Gene. You're on the air. Go right ahead.
Hi, thanks. Good afternoon, Bob. Listen every day to you and Dennis. I just received an email correspondence from my employer today stating that beginning on July 19th, employees who can provide proof that they are fully vaccinated will not be required to wear a face mask, although they are encouraged and welcome to do so. Unvaccinated employees must continue to wear a face mask until they can provide full proof of full vaccination. On or around July 12th, we will be announcing a new proof of vaccination status online application where employees will be able to submit proof of their full vaccination.
So you must show your papers that you have complied with the government's orders, or else you will be punished, penalized, stigmatized with the scarlet letter. Are they going to make the mask red so that you like the scarlet mask to show that you are one of the dirty, unwashed who refuse to get a vaccine?
Absolutely. Register with your vaccine card. So, my choice, my body. What happened to that?
Well, you know what? I said it before, and I'll say it again. I think there are probably attorneys waiting for the call for somebody to do this and perhaps to even file on a class action basis, that anybody that is mandated to wear something to accept something that is not an FDA-approved drug, which is what I was sharing earlier on, you cannot be discriminated against because of that. Now, it sounds to me like your discrimination will be the forced compliance with the mask mandate. I don't know what your time schedule looks like. I don't know if you have the energy or the ability or the finances to hire an attorney to sue, but I would advise, and it's easy for me to do because I don't have the situation, but I would advise anybody that is facing a forced vaccination or lose your job or be forced to do something different at your job than others. That is discrimination, which is a violation of federal law, as far as I understand.
And don't we have HIPAA laws to protect us from this?
Well, a lot of lawyers have said yes and no. You don't actually have HIPAA to protect you from it. There's a couple of caveats that I can't really recall off the top of my head, but they made sense when they explained them. But there is, like I said, the right to informed consent. You have to be able to give your consent to accept this, and that consent is based on a number of things that they can't prove to you. And that would be about side effects, long-term effects, etc. And if they can't provide you with that information so that you can give informed consent to take this unapproved, by the way, non-approved FDA drug, then you should not have to take that. And I'm confident that if some attorneys are willing to pick this up and run with it, that is what a judge would say as well.
Great.
I wish you the very best, Gene. And you know what? Call me back on my local show. I would love to hear, a follow-up to this. Since you're from Cleveland and you listen to me in Cleveland, I would love to hear a follow-up to this, and I hope other people do the same thing. All right, final segment coming up on the Dennis Prager Show.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Yesterday, General Milley told a congressional hearing that there is very unlikely and very little motivation for the People's Republic of China on this, the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party, to assault Taiwan in the near term. Quote, there's no reason to do it militarily, and they know that. So I think the probability is probably low in the immediate near-term future. Your reaction, Senator Cotton?
Well, I think that's right. Up through the end of the Beijing Olympics in February, Russia didn't invade Crimea, and 8 months before the Sochi Olympics in 2014, they invaded it 4 days after those Olympics ended.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Surprise!
Sharon and I.
Sharon and you what?
Things just happened.
My girlfriend and my best friend.
You got 30 days to grow up, son.
Nathan Hanning, it is good to have you home.
Nona, it's Nathan.
Well, you don't mind my giving her your room, do you?
Really, though, thanks for thinking of me for this position.
I thought about you first. Come on, growing up, I had a huge crush on you.
There are things that we all need to change about ourselves, but we can't blame God because He helps us change.
Stream on your phone, tablet, or TV. Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Anyway, you were talking about Bill Cosby, and I kind of disagreed with you about, you were saying about all the women. I might say maybe 18 women?
Oh, no, it's close to 50 women that have made allegations.
50?
50.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you believe all of them are telling the truth?
You think all 50 are lying, including Beverly Johnson, one of the first black major models in America? She said he also gave her drugs and tried to rape her.
I'm a woman, and what I'm saying is, and they're in Hollywood. He's a high-profile man,
mm-hmm.
and they wanted to be alone with him. They might not have wanted his advances, but it's kind of
Lynn, please. There's no doubt that because
Well, we're going to wrap it up here very quickly. I wanted to give you some of Dr. Carol Swain. Listen, I still have a Facebook page. Not that I'm proud of that, but I do use it to continue to communicate with my listeners when I'm off the air. And if you want to do a friend request, I've got about 30 spots on it right now. I continue to clean it out and unfriend losers who are pushing this, that, or the other thing. But I've got about 30 spots on it right now, and I will post. In fact, I have already posted, but I'll bump it up, the Carol Swain interview that I was talking about, in which she talks about the dangers of the 1619 Project and the dangers of critical race theory. I can't say it enough. It's extraordinarily important for African Americans, reasonable, confident and common-sensible African Americans who don't buy into all of the nonsense to speak out against critical race theory. Racism is bad no matter who the target of racism is. If the target of racism is a black person by racist white people, I will defend those black persons. If the target of racism is a Latino or Latina by anybody, I will defend them against racism. And yes, if the target of racism is a white person because they are called racist and oppressive and supremacist by nature of the birth of their color of their skin at birth, then I will defend those white persons. Racism is evil and it's bad at every single turn. There are no exceptions. And critical race theory essentially demonizes white people, calling them evil and bad and racist and supremacist simply for being born. And that's it. And that's not acceptable. That's not tolerant. There's also, by the way, something that I've shared, and I may share this again. If you're a Facebook friend, you can friend request me at Bob France, Frantz. Like I said, I've got about 30 spots left on it. But there's another great piece that I'm going to post. I actually printed this. I'm not always a huge fan of National Review, because National Review is the publication that came out in 2016 as being Never Trump, some of the editors and so forth. But there's still some great people who write for it, including my friend Peter Kirsanow. But the National Review did a primer on CRT, critical race theory. It came from the Californians for Equal Rights Foundation. And this was printed in National Review in spring of this year. It's headlined, Critical Race Theory, Ideology, Practices, and Ways to Push Back. I loved it so much, I printed it, and I now have it. It's about a 20-page manual that I have printed. Read it, learn it, share it, because that's another way that we push back against this evil division, this Marxist division of our country. Make no mistake, that's exactly what it is. So again, that's my only social media I have left right now is that Facebook page. So if you want to friend request me at Bob France, Frantz, you can read some of this stuff on your own. That's going to have to do it for now, though. Thanks again to the crew, especially Sean. I appreciate it, and William as well. Brad, Christian, thank you. And thanks to Wesley on the phones, thank you. And thanks to Dennis for letting me sit in. Hopefully he'll be ready to go tomorrow. We'll see you the next time on The Dennis Prager Show.